What's going on, everybody? You are listening to the Event Guys podcast. Our goal on this show is to help event profs be successful in this awesome industry that we're in. And whatever your path is, whether you're starting your own company, building your career, or developing your personal brand, we promise to bring together amazing guests and discuss relevant topics to help you along the way. Today, Carol Galle of Specialty Events talks about transitioning into the event industry from a completely different field, building a successful company from scratch, and how to network and connect and become a leader in the event industry. It's an awesome episode, so enjoy Carol Galle. So welcome, first and foremost. Thanks for joining us. And so let's start. Just give us the brief history of time, so to speak, on who you are, how you got into the event industry, and talk about specialty events and how you built the company up to where it is today.
Okay, so I got into the industry. I started off working for General Motors when I was very young, and I was an administrative assistant. At some point, I was tasked with planning what was then called the Dealer Sun School, and later renamed to the Dealership Management Academy. It was called the Dealer Sun School because it was a 4-week program that taught the sons and a few daughters of GM dealers how to take over their parents' dealership. So in planning that, I had access to, world-famous business experts. GM, spared no expense. So they brought in these amazing, talented presenters on how to run your own company, and I got to sit in the back of the room. So I'd never thought about leaving GM. Right? It was the golden handshake, the golden ring, whatever. It's, you were there, you stayed there. But I started to get excited about having a business, and I was planning events and liking it, and knew that I didn't know what an agency was like, though, or to work in one. So I went to work for an agency. So I left GM and went to work for one of their agencies for a couple of years and figured out what that environment was all about. And then the HR director and I shook hands over a Coney Island hot dog and
Wait, Lafayette or American?
American, I believe it was.
All right.
And we started an events company. And then we went back to our previous employers, we went back to our agency and said, hey, it says this role as an HR person, at that time I was actually a journalist for them, but now we're event planners. Would you let us plan your events? So they said yes. And then I went back to General Motors and said, could I have my old job back, but now as a contractor, as an agency? And they were 2 of our first early clients.
Nice.
Wow, that's great.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So the agency is who said, yes, you can plan our events that you had gone to. And the folks that you used to work with and for at GM also said, well, that's a great first client to have just a handshake relationship to start things off with. Yeah. Fantastic. Now, at that point, though, your experience in events was somewhat organic. It sounds like that you just you happened to be the person in the place when it needed to be done and learn that way.
Exactly. I mean, back then, you couldn't go to school for event management. Yeah. You came into the field either as an administrative assistant or somebody in PR or marketing at some point. But there were no books on the subject, right? I mean, there were like nothing. And so we had to invent it as we went along, which was a lot of fun.
Wow. Okay. And you also said you were a journalist as
Yes.
well. So you worked at GM, and then you've also been at the agency. And where does the journalist background comes from? Did you go to school for that?
I did. So my degree is in communications and journalism, and that was my intent when I went to work for General Motors, just to be in their corporate communications department. I just kind of ended up in education and training. But then when I went over to the agency, I went as a writer. By that point, I had my degree, and so I was a writer writing for GM publications at an agency for GM. So it was very incestuous.
Would you say, so I went to school for graphic design, went to Western, that's what my degree's in. And what I'm doing now is obviously not graphic design, but I find that having those skills, whether it's, because I design my own website or, materials and this and that, helps me tremendously to have a set of skills unrelated to what you actually do. Would you say that you use the journalist and the communication skills a lot in what you do now?
Absolutely. It's that inquisitiveness of a journalist, right? You're always asking questions. You're always asking why. So we find ourselves asking clients that all the time. You want to throw a great event, but why? What's the purpose? What are you really trying to achieve? So that line of questions really actually helps.
Yeah. Well, that was a great lead-in. Okay. So you have GM as a client. And now I would imagine it's obviously not all of GM. It was a particular subset or some division or group within GM that you were planning events for?
It was just my old job, which was at that point the Chevrolet Dealership Management Academy. So it was that particular, type of event. So I had the Dealership Management Academy. We had some business from Sandy Corporation, which was the agency that we were with. And then I had the Electric Power Research Institute International Low-Level Radioactive Waste Conference and Exhibit.
Oh, yeah, them. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the acronym for that again?
Very long.
Yeah, we all know those guys.
Yeah.
So we started off working a little bit in the auto industry and then also in rad waste, so that was kind of cool. And really that was my intention all along because, having grown up in the Detroit area, we all see agencies that become very focused in one industry. And when that agency or that industry takes a dive, you go with it.
You're right.
So very intentionally, I wanted to build a company that had a diverse client base, and radioactive waste happened to be one of the first things that we hit on outside of the house.
Fantastic. Okay, so here you are with now three, let's call it three clients. And, these are, for the most part, two of them at least, were places you came from, so you had a relationship there. But now you've got this well, first of all, where did the name Special D come from? And I know you say Special T, Special D, and it's got the play on words.
Yeah, so over cocktails with a neighbor. And so I was married before, and my married name at the time started with D. And my business partner was Denise. So it kind of was that. And then also just that we wanted to be part of Detroit and kind of draw that into. And then we had the tagline years ago also of leave the details to us.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of reasons.
All right.
That's
all right.
great.
So now you got that name. So now you're at this place where you've got this young company and you've got to figure out where to go with it and how you're going to grow it. And one of the things we love talking to people about is, from everything you've said, you didn't necessarily have a background in designing the financial systems of a company and establishing processes and all that. So now you're at this place. How do you decide, where to go to build this company and how to build a sales team and where was your specialty and how to surround yourself with people and, just how you kind of kept going from there?
And also on that too, what was the rate of growth? How fast did you grow? How fast did you build your team in that process?
Quick. So back when working from home wasn't cool, we were going to work out of our home for the first, so often to kind of get started. I was my business partner's home. And that lasted about 4 weeks. And, we had these clients and we had to move out. So we were looking for office space in 4 weeks.
Wow.
One of the reasons I felt comfortable, though, starting this business was a couple of reasons. First, it was low overhead in general. You look at people that open restaurants or things like that. The overhead is incredible. We needed a phone, a computer, a desk. It was a pretty low risk, and I'm all about sort of safe risk taking.
Yeah.
But my business partner had the HR and finance background, and I had the communications, sort of a little bit of sales and marketing, and the events background. So I felt like we had all the pieces to really start the company, but definitely relied on outsiders. From the start, we went for the best accountant we could possibly afford, the best lawyer, right? We didn't want to, we wanted to make sure we had good advisors.
That's the nugget right there.
That's a nugget.
And that's something I wish that I had thought of or knew or learned. But, so you got a partner who's got a background in finance, and then you've also got the wherewithal to seek out people, and I would assume the lawyer side of it, you had them help you draft your contracts and
Yep.
Review everything that you're doing. I think that's something that every single person who may listen to this podcast can take to heart is doing the work ahead of time versus when you find yourself neck deep in something and realizing you didn't do that already.
Or it's too late, right?
Yeah.
Cover your bases before you start running around them.
Yeah, design the old adage of work on your business more than you work in your business, right?
Yeah.
So now you've got these systems and you're building up. Talk about from sales and marketing now. For all of us, we were just talking a little while ago about where we're at right now with leads that are coming in and how we're trying to grow and where we're trying to grow to get to. But obviously that wasn't the case then that we're living in now. How did you guys focus on growing the company, networking, and sales?
For the first 15 years, I don't think I had a single salesperson. It was always word of mouth and referral. We just felt like if we continue to do a good job and we continue to ask our clients for referrals, that's how it would happen. And to be honest, we loved what we did. We were just looking for an opportunity to sort of see the world and travel and throw great events. And we weren't really trying to be the next biggest agency in town for a long time. And it wasn't until the recession hit that I realized how much this meant to me, because at that point I was on my own. My business partner had to leave because she had family commitments. And I thought, this is not just fun. This matters, and it can matter, and I can make a difference. And it just was a completely different mindset. We're going to make it through this recession, and I'm going to be something better than I was before. And here we are in a very similar situation.
Yeah. So you were referring to the 08 recession.
Yeah, right.
That mindset, what I do matters, and it can matter. That's huge to me. And as we talk to, even in sales calls, when I'm talking to a client and I know they're going to talk to, in my case, 4 other bands, or in his case, 3 or 4 other videographers and photographers, we try to convey that in a non-sales pitchy way, because it is the truth, that we care deeply about what we do and what we create.
Right.
And we care about the impact we have the opportunity to make on these people's lives.
Right.
Talk about that mindset that you have.
Yeah, because every time you gather people together in a room, right, whether they're to learn or to celebrate or to network or to be educated, some sort of change happens. Ideally, they leave that space and they've met someone, they've learned something, some sort of change happens, right? So we want to be the company that makes sure that change is for the good and that it occurs and it inspires people, because otherwise, why are we even doing it, right? I mean, I know it just doesn't matter.
Yeah. Having fun, of course, right? But that's the easy part on the surface, the social side of the events, So does that, everything that you just described, does that play into, and it sounds like it does very much so, play into the types of events that you guys are experts at, that you pitch yourselves as being able to create? What are the main types of events that you guys do on a consistent basis?
So really anything with a business purpose. Doesn't mean it's just corporate, though. It could also be there's business purposes that nonprofits have. They're trying to build relationship or raise funds. So we work with a lot of nonprofits, a lot of corporate, a lot of foundations that fund the grantees. And the only things we really don't do, we don't do a lot of incentives, incentive trips, and there's some wonderful companies that do that, and we leave them to that. But anything where there's really a business purpose.
Gotcha.
Which is why we had to continue during the recession or during the pandemic, because, even though we couldn't gather in the same place, the business purpose still existed. Our clients still needed to bring people together. They still had goals they had to hit. So we had to look at how can we help them meet their goals if we can't be in the same room.
Yeah.
So Carol, actually speaking of the pandemic, can you talk to us a little bit more intimately of what that was like when you got the news and you're talking with your team? What steps did you take? What was the initial feeling, and how did you move forward from there?
Definitely went through the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still are. We still are dealing with those.
I'm generally a really positive person, but I'm also a realist. And I remember sitting in the car, I just got gas in my car, and sitting there listening to, someone on the radio talking about basically our profession had become illegal. You can't gather people in a room. It was illegal.
Very well said.
And, as a business owner, you have a lot of what ifs always in your head, right? What if this happened? What if this happens? That was never on my radar, that someday I'd wake up and what I do wasn't wanted or valued or possible. Wow. So, there were a lot of other people in my industry that kept saying, by spring or fall, we're going to be back. And I was just a realist. I remember telling my senior leadership team, we're done for 2020. There are not going to be any events. We need to build a bridge to 2021 and beyond, because it's just done. So we need to make some hard decisions really fast to keep the company and the brand alive, so that there's something to come back to when this is all over.
I know a lot of that for you was, and we'll get into more of your personal brand here in a little while, but I saw that you had a very, very strong presence in Facebook and on social media, just in the industry around sharing information, facilitating conversations, always making sure I would always see your name when new developments came around, that you were making sure everybody saw it. Obviously, that played a part in like you said, staying relevant, staying out there. But that's not an easy question to answer, and all of us have faced it in the event industry, especially those of us who did predominantly weddings, where we're talking to these brides and grooms. Who just, they're you can feel their heart breaking through the phone, But then we ask the question, well, how do we stay relevant? How do we keep ourselves alive? And so how did you guys answer that question? What did you say? So that the next day, now you've got a full gas tank and no events to go to. Right. And you're saying to yourself, all right, specialty and you as a person, I got to stay relevant. Yep. I got to stay out there. So what do you do?
Well, the first thing we did was take advantage of the first PPP loan, which we were very grateful for that, and that made a huge difference. So I was able to bring back a lot of people and then divide them into sort of 2 teams and, go after what's the future? How can we meet our clients' needs in this new world? And so we had 6 different possible ways to do that, lots of fun, crazy ideas, and in the end, we landed on that virtual events. So that was sort of our way out of it. But, from an industry standpoint, it's so fascinating that we all went through this. We all experienced it a little bit differently, but we all were hit. And one of the first things that I noticed were some of my, I'm friends with a lot of my competitors, but some of the larger agencies that are competitors around the country that I didn't even know started reaching out, and I started connecting with them on social channels, and we started having these very real conversations about what we're facing. And it was like there were no holds barred. We just shared everything, and that was fascinating, and I love that. I hope a lot of it continues. And then, so, when things like the Live Events Coalition, founded, that was a national organization, it just seemed like a natural to be a part of that and continue the conversations with some of these other agencies, because you could be in Detroit, Chicago, or LA. We were all hit, and you were having the same, situation.
That's really interesting. So in the wedding side of things, there is a lot of collaboration. A lot of us do, oh, I'm booked, but I like this guy, go to him,
Yeah.
It's very interesting that in the corporate side of things and the agency side of things, that there was a lot of that information sharing or that empathy towards each other. And you said it was sincere. But right before that, you talked about how you guys sat down as a team. Eventually the conversation led to virtual events. But if you don't mind me asking, just from a business standpoint, so you're at your office. Do you, as a coach or as a leader, how do you facilitate that conversation? I personally, sometimes I'll find a challenge where I know I need to get to this place, and I start to rack my brain on trying to figure out, well, what's the path to that? And then frustration kicks in, because I'm like, well, I'm not thinking of the things I want to think of. I'm not getting to where I want to get to. And some people just have this natural flow. I think the best leaders just know how to, you may not always be the best one to drive the ship, but you know exactly where to point it,
Yep.
How do you get your team into that frame of mind, into that mindset of saying, it's not a time for sorrow and pity. It's a time for, I'm not even going to say the PIVOT word, but all those things.
Well, we all just sort of needed to make a living. We all needed this, and the best thing we could do is rely on each other. That's all we knew. We knew events. What can we do together as a team? And it sort of did happen naturally, but. I always sort of think of my staff like when you think of those lights on the runway as a pilot's taking off, right? There are those little lights. Like those are the voices. Those lights are the voices of my staff every day, sort of keeping me on the right direction. Like I'm the visionary. I have all these great ideas, but they're sort of telling me this is what it's like in the real world. This is, we're canceling contracts every day with clients. We're rebooking. We're dealing with, COVID protocols. There's issues with Wi-Fi compatibility, all these things that they're sort of feeding me what's real in the events world, and then we just sort of all go forward together.
I love it. It's an awesome answer.
Can I follow up on that real quick?
Please do.
So if you're willing to share, I would love to hear, you said we had a big brainstorming session to try and figure out what and how and where we're going to go next. It kind of landed on the virtual event space. Are there any other options or things you'd love to share that might be, it didn't work, or either are even at this point kind of hilarious? I'd love to hear some of those things.
Well, one of them, some of the a lot of caterers and things, as you know, in this industry right now, have gone into like boxed things that go to people's homes and stuff. So we were kind of looking at that early on, and we got the idea of a back to work pack, because we thought when employees are coming back to work, the office that they're going to is going to be pretty sterile. You're not going to be able to go hang out in the coffee room. You're not going to get snacks. At that point, we just didn't know we were going to get PPE, right, where everybody was struggling. So we came back with this back to work pack concept. And it was all going to be Michigan products, so we sourced it all locally. And it was the PPE, and it was a week's worth of healthy snacks, and it was all the things that might make an employee feel comfortable when they got back to their desk. So we thought that was great, and we had this whole process ready to go, and then nobody went back to the office.
Yeah.
No one ever went back.
You added home delivery to the list of services.
And it didn't seem as appropriate. So that was fun, but that went nowhere.
Gotcha. Well, there's still a chance for that to happen once we do get back to work, I guess.
Yeah.
That's great.
Carol, I'm curious, like you talk about, I really love the analogy of like the runway with the voices being the lights, and I'm going to keep that one and remember that. I'm curious now that we're, are a year into this whole experience with COVID and the pandemic, are there any things that you would say now, if you could go back in time, anything that you would have done differently, that you would do, just kind of any big nuggets or guiding lights or North Stars that you've taken away from this experience that you would share with our audience?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think, there's a lot of things we tried, right? Even personally trying to get this, for the first month, I'm like, I'm going to learn French. I have nothing else to do, right? And I took a course, and that fell away. And I think, although this was a shared experience, I think we all went through it individually, and we all made different choices, and we learned different things about ourselves. So I can't say there's really one thing that's different, but probably being a better leader, if I had to say something, because you just had to. I just had to. whenever I've had difficult decisions to make, I type out something on Microsoft, on Word, and I just type it all in my head, and I save it on my desktop as a date. So I have like a date in 2008 where this was the speech I gave to the company to say. And so reviewing those and studying them and saying, what can I say this time and where are we going next? And has been an interesting experience. And hopefully we are a year out, and now the document on my desktop is where do we go from here, because things are so much better. Even the last couple of weeks, it's amazing how many calls we've been getting. I feel like the tide has turned, and we're going to have now the issue of supply and demand, right?
Yes.
We're going to get slammed.
Very
Right.
much so.
Social's going to come back first, corporate's coming too, maybe trade shows at the end, but that supply and demand is going to be so challenging because so many great people have left the industry, and we're going to have to deliver the same type of quality events at maybe a larger scale even with less resources. And I think we're all going to be fighting for that.
I couldn't agree more. We've all discussed how incoming leads for new events over the past 6 to 8 weeks have been huge.
Yeah.
We're booking events, which is great,
Yeah.
with the expectation that we'll do them. But, and this goes back to the panel that I saw you on over at Display Group a few weeks back for the launch of Building 22 there. The question of the landscape, to some extent, we don't know what yet, but to some extent has changed forever. I mean, there's no way around that.
Right.
And you seem to have a pretty good finger on the pulse. You have a pretty wide perspective, let's put it that way. What is your opinion on, like you said, I think people are itching. They're chomping at the bits to get back to some partying, what in the corporate world, in the wedding world, in just in life, you can see it when they open restaurants. What is your opinion on the event industry and where, is it going to go back to what it was before? Is it going to be like the roaring 20s where it's going to be even bigger for a handful of years? Or is it going to be very trepid? Like, where do you see us going in the next 5 years?
Well, I hope not as the Roaring '20s, because what followed that was a depression. So let's not go there. But it has changed forever. People have had a year to get used to different, to make changes in their lives and get used to technology. I think, in my area of the business, it's going to be a combination of virtual, hybrid, and live events. As much as we all want to be out there in person, and social events are going to give us that opportunity, there are some corporate clients that are going to say, you know what? We can do this virtually. It costs less. And for some types of events, it makes sense. Training conferences, things like that, you could definitely do virtually. So I think it's going to be a combination as we go forward. And what we're really telling clients, since we're not all vaccinated yet, that we're not out of the woods, we're saying basically prepare for a virtual experience. Make sure you've got a really high quality product that you're giving to your audience with a live component. But that's separate, so that if we have a hotspot in a certain area where your event is held, or if something else happens, that live event could fall away if needed, and you still have this basic quality product. But that's kind of the way forward, I think, is that hybrid. But it's also very expensive to do hybrids. It's twice as expensive because it's like teaching your kids, right? What you teach them, the way a teacher teaches virtually is very different from the classroom. So we're going to have two different meeting designs going forward. You're going to have the audiovisual that maybe you didn't need quite to that extent now that you're doing virtual, and plus you're going to have food and beverage you normally have. I mean, it's just going to be double.
Yeah.
So that's scary.
Has Special D really, like if you were to go to your website today, and I was taking a look at it versus a year ago, would the services page, have you really adapted and evolved with this already, or are you still kind of feeling it out? Like if you were to go see it, would you say that's somebody who is definitely keeping up with what's going on right now?
That's what our clients say. So yes, if you go to our website, you're going to see people wearing masks, first of all, because when we get to the in-person or when we do studio shoots or thing, we have to keep that in mind. But virtual is a big part of our website now.
Yeah.
It gets the most hits at the moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
That page.
The page that talks about the precautions you take or the services that you now offer?
The virtual services gets the most hits
Interesting.
for now.
Yeah.
Have you guys made changes to your websites with anything?
Nope.
Yeah.
I don't want you to
Nope.
leave. Gosh, Mike,
Nope.
why didn't you do that? But I was just saying, the same for me. I have not updated my website.
Nor me.
Yeah.
And that's a really good takeaway. We've still been talking to so many. Every conversation's about rescheduling, a wedding that's already in the books, or booking a new one, or corporate events and festivals and things like that. But we've done, we live streamed with Bill Brown Ford, our friends over there, and with the American Cancer Society over at Display Group. We had some really great events, And I'll be totally honest and transparent. I've done nothing on my website, which is our first line of defense, the only piece of the internet that we each own, right?
Right.
I've done nothing to adjust what I show people to tell that story in a different way.
We've got some more work to do, boys.
Yeah, right.
Homework, and everybody listening to this as well.
Yeah, people need to know that you're still out there and you're still operating, right? And when we look for suppliers now, we're doing events out of state. We're looking at their website carefully to say, are they still there? Did they get it? Are they wearing masks? And just you want to have a sense that it's not just a shell because so many people have left the business.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. So I've got multiple bands here, and I have brides that have just their first line of their email is just want to make sure the band is still together.
Exactly.
You know? And that's something that maybe we can be more proactive in sending out that type of message and talking to people about. And maybe it's even a good reason, for lack of another one, to reach out and have another touch point with people to say, you didn't ask, but just want to let you know we're
still
here.
Yeah,
we're strong.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of vetting process for that as you find suppliers and so forth to when you're working with a client to know that maybe they're going to be here in 6 months or whatever financially based on where they're standing and stuff like that?
So, industry-wide, a lot of agency owners, who I talked with earlier on, we all expected that we were going to get asked a lot of financial questions, as things came back, by our clients. Show us your financials. But we haven't really seen that happen. I think that, if you look at my financials, it's going to be the same as the event planner agency in Chicago.
Yeah.
We're all kind of in the same boat. Be realistic. We're still here. We're viable. Maybe our numbers aren't going to show up from last year, but hopefully this year they will.
Yeah. Curious, as I was thinking about this, when you started telling us your story and the history, we didn't really get into, or you didn't get into too much of specifically what it is you guys actually provide. Because some event companies are, they do the rentals and the decor and the look. Other ones are more of the intellectual property of the planning, and then some are hybrids, and some are, more of the staffing and management of. I just realized we didn't get too deep in that. Tell us more about exactly what Specialty is known for, like what you guys do for an event.
So we are sort of the general contractor, right? We come in and we have access and relationships with suppliers all across the country, but we're your project manager, your meeting designer, helping you figure out what's the purpose, what's the objectives, and then how do we achieve that? So whether it's, by this city or by what type of event now, right? Is your objectives going to be best served by virtual, hybrid, or live? And then where should that take place? What is your audience looking for? What's the, what should the experience be for them? What do you want them to walk away with? And then pulling all the team members together that make that happen, from entertainers to caterers to printers, everything that goes into it, because it takes a village, right, for an event.
Yes. Yeah. And I know, I've been fortunate enough to interact with you guys on multiple events, not as many as I would love to be able to.
Have to fix that.
Yeah. But so you said you do a lot around the country. What's your percentage of Metro Detroit, Michigan, national?
So we've worked in all 50 states, and we've done some things international
Wow.
as well. Thanks to Harley Davidson for that. That was cool. We did a program for them alone in 50 states. But we worked a lot around the country. And, it was probably before the pandemic, probably 60% out of Michigan and 40% here in the Detroit area. But we also serve as a Detroit Destination Management Company, too, a DMC. So we kind of filled that need. And so we get a lot of incoming business from that as well, which is so cool because you get to show off the city and all the wonderful stories that we have.
Yeah. And your office is in Detroit, right?
Yeah, so we used to have a brick and mortar building in Ferndale, and then we always had an office on Bamboo as well. So we working like that, for co-working. So when the pandemic hit, I did get out of my lease, and so we went completely virtual. And so we have the touchdown space in Bamboo, and then as of yesterday, we have an office in the Display Group complex.
Oh, nice.
So,
Wow, that's great.
Fantastic. So tell us about that. So I have seen, we've all been there, right? Mm-hmm. I haven't toured the full new space yet. John Hamm invited us down to go take a look at it, but tell us about the space that you've got there. That building is just, what a diamond in the rough.
Mm-hmm. It's cool. And, he's really collected, he's got AVL now, he's got Full View Productions. So there you go. Look at that. So he's kind of pulled together, some people within the industry, and it's just wonderful to be able to just walk down the hall and collaborate and, say, what about this? What if, throw some ideas out there? And I think that's what inspired us to, when Rick brought it up to us, said, yeah, it's a great fit. We'd love to hang out in the hallways with you guys and just, listen in and see what we can learn, and hopefully we can share some things too.
That's awesome. Yeah, we had Rick as a guest on, we say here today, last week.
Right.
Anybody who's out there listening may say it's the next. We're not sure yet.
The order of things.
Rick is also a guest on this podcast.
Good.
Make sure you go to the website and find out which one that is.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
So interesting. So bamboo is awesome. Obviously, we were in WeWork because I found that before I knew, what bamboo. Not that I would have necessarily not gone one way or the other, but Amanda, is that her name?
Yeah,
the founder.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, I'd really love to have her as a guest on this podcast. She seems to be just a young, smart entrepreneurial type of person. Yeah,
She'd do it. Yeah, she's great.
and you're right there on Washington Street.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. That's so cool.
Is there another bamboo space in Royal Oak as well?
Yeah, they just opened.
Yeah,
opened
just
it,
opened
right?
in February, right? Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, what a testament to open a new office space in the middle of this environment. Come on.
I know, right? Or a restaurant or anything. God love the people for opening during this time.
Yeah. So when I was reading about just on your website and about you and stuff like that, and you talked about your love of Detroit and New York.
Yes.
Was in there. What's the New York story? Because I haven't heard anything about your history that says New York. Which to me, I think next to Disney World is the greatest place on earth.
Absolutely.
And after Detroit.
I'm a city girl. I've just, ever since I stepped foot in that city, I was probably 17. I loved it. I go back there as much as I can. Everybody in my office knows that if it's a New York event, even though I'm supposed to be running the company and working on the business instead of in the business, if it's a New York event, I'm going to get first dibs.
I love that.
So I try to go there as much as I want.
What a cool city. We have a guest that we're trying to get who lives out there. Logic would say we would do a remote episode, but we're all like, well, why don't we? Let's see. How can we put a travel rig together? Yeah, I don't care if we drive, fly. I don't care what it is, man. Get me to New York right now.
Oh, yeah.
Although I would. Have you been there in the last year?
No, I have not flown. I mean, I miss being on planes. I was on the plane, all the time because of our national work and our clients out of state, and I'm just dying.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's coming. It certainly is coming. And by all means, as usual, guys,
Sure.
jump in anytime.
Yeah, I wanted to go back a little bit to the beginning when you started the story, all the way back at GM. You mentioned that you kind of had this amazing access to all these business leaders, to innovators, to those teaching those seminars, and you were in the back row. Are there any names you'd want to drop, or moguls that you remember, or kind of glean some information from that maybe someone listening or even us could say, hey, let's go grab one of their books today and start reading?
From back then, I'd rather focus, I guess, on the future and the now.
Perfect.
But I love the stuff that Danny Meyer is doing in the hospitality, world with Union Square Hospitality. He's got a great book out too. There's a lot of people in this industry that I love to follow. Howard Givner, who started the Event Leadership Institute, I think he's brilliant. We're usually on the same page with most things when we're talking about the future of events. Rafat Ali, who co-founded Skift, which is, if you guys haven't seen that, anybody in the industry needs to look at Skift. So it's a sort of a market research, intelligence platform, whatever, that covers events, the events industry, travel, and there's just a lot of really cool data on there.
Predominantly a website that we would go to check it out?
Yeah, it's a website, but they'll do podcasts, they'll do meetings, SKIFT.
IFT? Yeah, I thought I heard of that.
So, yeah. Try to follow who's looking down the road right now.
Okay, so on that note, I see your name in social media a lot. The Detroit Event Council, pretty much all over the place. But sharing information, not just talking about specialty or what you guys did the last event, but very outward thinking. Where do you position yourself, or why do you push to be that person? Like, what is it? What position do you see yourself in? Like, where does that personality come from that is, more industry based than just with your company?
So I'm someone who likes to find common ground. And if you really want to get personal, you take it all the way back to my parents, who I love dearly. Didn't always get along very well, so I was the mediator. I was the person that tried to find common ground. So maybe I'm doing that in an industry as well right now.
That's a very, very interesting. And that's, we love, to whatever obviously extent you feel comfortable talking about stuff, we love hearing about that. But, and one of the reasons I ask is, we love the idea of leadership, and, obviously that leads to that's going to strengthen your personal brand, and it's going to eventually, not that your goal is to just create opportunities for specialty, but it will, in establishing yourself as a leader. And I think it goes back to when you talked about that passion and caring about what you do and being able to make a difference. It's the same, I would imagine it's the same mindset that you take when you go out and try to help other event profs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the pandemic has forced us all to be so much closer and all this great sharing. And it just felt like, at the end of the day, what do I want to stand for? I want to be able to say that I got my business through the pandemic and through a recession before that, but what did I do that made a difference? That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
In any small way. Really, I'm not doing that much. I'm just kind of trying to connect people, but I think we all should look for that. And if we all did, imagine what a better connected and successful and happier environment we'd all be working in.
Oh, there it is. There's the intro cut right there.
Right.
So, Carol, you're talking about finding common ground. Can you talk to us about management tips and how do you lead a team, and share with our listeners some advice on that topic?
Sure. So, we operate on the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, which has been really helpful.
Traction's in the greatest books ever written.
Absolutely. So many companies are on that. It's crazy. And, that's all about having a vision and then putting the tools and using the tools that they give you to give you the traction to achieve your objectives, and then just being a healthy company. So there's just so many good practices in there that I like that a lot. And we followed that. And I think that's helped me put structure in place in the company to be a leader. Prior to the pandemic, we were also piloting something called catalytic coaching, which was more about mentorship and, supporting people in their growth versus annual performance reviews where it's just how'd you do in these 4 areas, and,
Right.
Are you going to get more money or what? And the coaching part really appealed to me. We just started that during when the pandemic hit, so we're going to hopefully revisit that this year.
Interesting. Did you bring in an implementer from EOS, or did
Yes.
you did?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're not the first person we've talked to that has done that.
Yeah.
I think we've all read the book, and probably have all tried on our own to do it. There's a lot of it you can do, a lot of the exercises you can do. But I think one of the lessons we've been hearing is the accountability factor, having a coach.
Right.
Because it's easy to say, yeah, I'm going to spend some time doing it today, and tomorrow I'll take a look at it, and whenever I get done with it, I'll be done with it. But if you got somebody you're paying money to come in, right?
Yep. Tiffany's our facilitator, and she's great. And you're right, it's that accountability factor. And still, all through the pandemic, her voice was in my head. Like, there'd be times when we'd be having management meetings and we're talking about all these issues, as a senior leadership team, and she would sort of be in the background, and then all of a sudden raise her hand and go, "Wait a minute, what did you just say? I think you have a problem here." And she would sort of shine a light on things that we, subliminally were pushing back. And so I was trying to be that light in the last year to think, oh, what would Tiffany say about this?
Interesting. In your opinion, could somebody who, a lot of event professionals are just one-man bands when they, start off, it takes a long time before you build a team. Would you say, was there ever a reason why somebody who's got their own company, they're just a solo op, would hire an implementer to help them do the traction, or is it not the time yet to do something like that? I've always struggled with that question.
Yeah, I think you need a team. You need other people besides you dedicated, because there's only so much you can do individually.
Yeah.
So you're going to get all these great ideas and you have this vision, but if you don't have the team around you to help support it, you're just going to get frustrated, I think. So
Yeah.
I think you need, maybe at least 3 or 4 people.
So when you start out, read the book, do the exercises. Then when you grow a little bit, you bring in an implementer, and then that's how you grow your team, huh?
There might be an opportunity, maybe for other individuals who want to do this to kind of have meetings together, like somebody else in another industry or something. Like, I'm a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, and
Yep.
they have forums. So they're like small groups where people, have a chance to share and implement. So maybe there's something like that with other business owners. See, I got an idea. Let's bring you all together,
There
right?
you
You
go.
individuals, get them in a room. Let's, so.
I like that. Okay, so you're in the entrepreneur.
How long have you been a part of that?
Hold on, go back to it.
EO, just say EO.
Cut that out. You're in the schmoobity.
So I speak clearly. You're in the. You're in EO.
Yeah.
How did that? I'm really intrigued by that organization. There's the Young Entrepreneurs Organization. There's the Young Presidents Organization. There's lots of organizations out there.
Yep.
But they tend to have the same mindset at their core. How did you come to be a member of this?
I'm a member of EO since 2017. And, I recognized I still had a lot to learn about a business owner, about running a business. You always are continually learning, right? And so I didn't go into it with the idea I was going to get business. I went into it with the learning objective. So signed up, and one of the first things I did was sign up for the Women of EO subchapter, and I flew to Athens, Greece, and spent a week with women who own everything from an environmental service company in Dubai to somebody who owns real estate in Bosnia, and people that I never thought, and manufacturing companies, and people I never thought I'd have anything in common with. But I learned. You absolutely
Wow.
can pick up something from all those people. It was a great community. And it's a good Detroit chapter. You should definitely check it out. So.
I definitely will. I think we should all definitely talk about that.
Athens next year, guys.
Yeah.
You might have to wear a dress for that one.
Yeah.
It's Greece.
It's worth it. I think that'd be worth it for sure. So talk about Detroit. I loved having my office down there.
Yeah.
I loved walking out that front door, and we were only a block away from each other,
Right.
like where you're at now.
I checked out WeWork. Yeah.
Yeah. Cornerstone Barrel House, one of my favorite places. Their sliders are greatest I've ever had.
Yep.
What's your favorite restaurant down there right now?
I got to give the guys at Oak and Reel credit because they opened at the start of the pandemic. They're in Milwaukee Junction area, and it's a really amazing restaurant, and I look forward to spending more time there once things open up a little bit better. But Oak and Reel is great. So many good places and so much energy, right? You just don't feel it. It's in the suburbs as much as you feel in the city, just walking the streets, and I want that back.
Yeah.
Looking forward to going back to work, to getting our corporate friends to bring their employees back to work so they're downtown, and we can start that up again.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never even heard of Oak and Reel, and I can't believe that. I feel like I used to
stopped
be
going to restaurants as soon as it opened.
I know. I just went to Maple Gray a couple weeks ago, which is
Yep.
over on the east side
Yep.
there. Not necessarily the best side of town. Have you guys heard of that one? It's on your guys' side of town.
I've actually performed there
great.
too.
You did?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
It was like a private birthday party. They rented it out. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that couldn't
People
have
were,
been
I
cheap.
think, were dancing on tables, if I remember correctly.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a good time.
I've been doing carry out for them through the pandemic. They're good.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Nice. So do you have plans then? Obviously, you've got a decently sized team. Do you have plans to so, I mean, obviously, Display Group is kind of your HQ at this point. Are you going to grow within them? Is there a partnership there? Or are you going to maybe kind of get out and get your own, like your own building? Or like, where do you guys see yourself going now?
So we had thought about going virtual even before the pandemic because, we're on the road all the time. We come in, we set up camp, we set up our office, we leave. We're so used to that. So even before this started, we thought, a lot of people want to work from home. They want that flexibility. So we're kind of going down that road anyway, but we need a hub. We need a strong hub where we can come together for meetings because meetings are important and events are important and, key conversations and things. And so we're just trying to figure out where that's going to be in Detroit.
Yeah.
Looking at obviously Bamboo, at their Display Group, kind of just testing the waters to see where we fit right now. But I don't foresee us ever having a freestanding building again. I like the being part of a larger organization.
That's very interesting to be a company with the history, the experience, the capabilities, and the team that you guys have, and being able to function at scale virtually.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good testament. I mean, I love having the space. I love being able to come here, but the idea of being able to run a company, I think, is pretty interesting. And you said it earlier too. You don't have a lot of physical objects that you have to necessarily store somewhere, right?
Right. We have some things, but primarily most of our suppliers have other rentals, things like that. We have a storage unit that has some signage and some office equipment, but we're really sort of the core. We're the extension of our client staff, from a planning purpose, so we can really set up and go anywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Have you been involved? I know what I see online, but have you been involved in any of the conversations, either with like the governor's office or any of the lobbying or the advocacy for opening up events? Have you? What involvement have you had in that? Because I feel like you're like a great person to speak on all of our behalf.
Yeah, so very early on, MSAE got together a group of hoteliers and planners and everything and tried to put together a huge document with recommendations for Governor Whitmer. This is what needs to be done to safely operate. And they crowdsourced, they got all these opinions, and to get everybody in our industry on the same page to put these recommendations together in the middle of the pandemic was crazy. Props to them for doing it. So I was a little bit involved in that toward the later stages, and it was interesting to sort of see what people were recommending, how far people should be apart, what sort of hygiene needed to be in the venues and things for live events to come back. So I was involved in that early on, but have not had a chance to do much since then.
Yeah, it's right now. I feel like we're very much at kind of a crucial point. In fact, even today, I think Governor Whitmer's supposed to be making some announcements today. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. But I mean, do you feel comfortable? I personally, I feel comfortable with a good portion of people being able to come back and do an event together. I mean, especially, you said you haven't flown. I've flown once, and you go to the airport and they make you stay, like 10 feet apart when you're in the line to check in your bag. And then you get on the plane,
I know.
and you're literally a foot and a half from somebody
I know.
wearing your mask both times, And then they tell you can't have anybody for an event, unless you're in the same household. But it just, I feel like there's just not, we could be so much more consistent. I know they're trying to operate up at, 100,000 feet and, speak on behalf of everybody. But I just feel like there's so much more we could be doing right now than we're allowed to do,
Yeah, it's hard. Getting everybody on the same page. Like I said, even that small project I did with giving those recommendations to the government, it was very hard to get people to agree on, what was appropriate. I mean, something as small as, do you think we should stop accepting cash? Well, I do large corporate events. I don't ever hand cash to the front desk at a hotel. But hotels, sometimes they have people that handle cash. And there were people that, there were hotels that said, absolutely, we're fine with it. And then there were planners that said, the association I plan for, those people will take offense to that. They won't like it. They won't come to your hotel if you tell them they can't pay cash, even if they weren't planning to at all.
Just the idea of it.
The idea of it. So, some tough.
Wow.
Yeah. If you can't agree, I mean, on something to me that seems pretty
Yeah,
simple.
that's pretty.
So how do you
base
find
level.
common ground in all of this,
Right.
right?
Right. I don't know. And it's very personal, too. I mean, I have my husband and I take care of his 98-year-old mother, and she's amazing. She lives by herself, and we take care of her. We go over there every day, but she lives by herself. She's in great health. I don't want this to be the thing that, that takes her. So we were very careful, and we've been very careful.
Yeah.
But she just got her first shot last week.
Oh,
So,
good.
Yeah, so she
Yeah.
can go out and have her margaritas.
My mom's 68, so a little younger, but she just got her first shot as well, and it was the same thing. She beat cancer, but obviously that affects her immune system, and so we were the same thing. So she's barely left the house there, but she'll say, she's in a good middle of the road spot where she wants to be able to go to the store and feel comfortable, but she also recognizes that there's still a lot of progress that we need to make.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Personal branding. So again, I think your name, at least in the metropolitan Detroit event industry, and who knows where people from this area might be listening, but your name is I think recognizable as the name of your company is. Was that intentional? And it's okay that you're not bragging. You're being open and honest with us. Was that intentional to really establish yourself as a leader in the industry? Do you focus as much on that as you do on the day-to-day of work? Or where does how do you approach and how do you see personal branding?
Well, obviously I want attention to be drawn to my company. So if I can help do that, I'll do whatever I need to, whether, being on a podcast or do whatever to draw attention. But again, I think aside from that, I'm also a person and I'm a member of this industry and I just want to be part of it. I want to have a voice. So it's almost a parallel situation, right? Sometimes I do it for the company and sometimes I just want to be part of things. I want to be part of where it's going.
Yeah. Well, a lot of what you've described, I think, leads to that mindset that you have, and that's what we're trying to tap into to help people kind of figure out how to get to that, how to find your creative voice, as we like to say, and that kind of thing, for sure. So we've got a little bit of time left here. One of the questions I have is, so let's say there's somebody who was an administrative assistant at GM and helped plan a couple of events and thinks, man, wouldn't it be what a pipe dream to own my own company and earn a living, let alone be wildly successful at doing it. You have a great story. So you're there with that person. They buy you a drink and say, would you tell me how to do that? What do you tell that person?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I tell them to be bold, to pick up the phone and call someone and ask them, how did you get there? You'll find someone to answer the question. Just keep calling until you do. And just ask them, what did it take? What recommendations? People do call me sometimes and ask that, and I answer as much as I can. If I can't answer every single call, but I do my best and try to give people a head start because that's the next generation, right?
Yeah, for sure. So find a mentor.
Yeah.
Do a lot. Think of the business and make sure you set your business up properly. Get the right people in place, the lawyers and the accountants and the financial people. Do all of that work for sure. Okay, those are good.
The other thing is, make sure it's right for you. The other piece of the sort of my early story was that when I was at GM and I had this journalism degree and I was also planning events, I wasn't sure which way to go, right? Do I want to become the journalist or stay the journalist or go in events? And so there was some management consultant, whatever I saw, and he said, it was very simple. He said, if you're not sure where you want to go, make 2 lists. The one list on the left side of the page is all the things that you do a little bit better than everybody else. They may not seem like big things to you, but all the things that you do, a little bit better. And then on the right side, make a list of the things you love to do, whether it's something as simple as gardening or your balancing your checkbook, whatever. And then if you prioritize those and you find a profession that, covers the top of both lists, you're going to be good at it. You're going to enjoy it. That means you're probably going to be successful. You're probably going to make a lot of money, and you're going to be happy.
Boom.
So when I
Great
did
nugget
that,
right there.
Yeah.
I figured out I was a better planner than a journalist. I loved it, but it wasn't, and so that's how at top of both of my list was to be an event planner, which led to the agency. So make sure you want to do it.
Yeah.
Your heart's
That's
in it.
really good.
That's a great story. Yeah.
Anything you haven't done yet that you want to do?
We have a long way to go when it comes to diversity in this industry. There is a story there. Why are we not a more diverse group of event planners? What can we do to fix that so that we mirror our audience? And it's going to take a lot of work and investigation and being intentional about why that is and helping to expand, our tent.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because I think we're very inclusive, right? I think as a community, we're very accepting of everything, any kind of people and preferences and all that. So we're not closed-minded by nature as an industry, yet we're not as diverse as we probably should be.
Yeah, and it's why aren't more people of color going into the industry and becoming an event planner? Right? Why not? Do they not? Is this a career that people not taught when they're in schools? It's something we need to get into the middle schools and high schools and say, hey, this is an option as a career. I think that's I don't know.
I think part of it's a stereotype of just people grow up and whether it's pop culture and movies and stuff like that, you just you see things that you're probably subconsciously your mind tells you that you can or can't do or that you should or shouldn't do. There's got to be some level of that, but that's where the proactive
Interesting question.
Yeah, and that's why you have to have representations. People don't see themselves; they're not going to go into that career. So we have to have more, more diverse planners and panels. That's why it's so important. We're always trying to work with panels to make sure that it reflects their audience.
Perfect
Wow.
airplane.
I told you eventually this was going to happen.
This
As
is
an
brought by
airport-
our sponsor moment here with the local, what is it, Washtenaw or whatever airport?
Piper Airplanes for all your
Wow.
transportation needs. There's a private airport right here, and
Something you didn't know when
Yeah.
you bought this, right?
yeah.
Or
Well,
rented this.
I knew that, something before I thought about doing a podcast.
Right, did better then.
Yeah, and so all it is people that own their own planes. And they just do lessons and stuff like that. So sorry about that. But we also said we want to be down to earth, and we don't want to be too stiff. And so if a plane flies overhead,
Roll with
Roll
it.
with it.
Right?
absolutely,
It's the events
absolutely,
industry, what all of you do, right?
yeah. Last questions from you guys.
Just talk about your motto: wag more, bark less.
Are you a dog gal?
I am a dog gal.
We
We have an
love
office
it.
dog. Yep. It goes to that being positive, right? Life's too short. Let's not be judgmental and cranky all the time. Let's try and be a little friendlier, and you're going to get much more done. I just find I'm not the type of person that's going to, I don't know, be really rough on someone just to get a better performance out of them. It's just wrong. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just wrong. We're on the same team. We're all trying to achieve the same goal, a successful event so that the client walks away and loves everything that we all do. And, we can be happy and feel like we've made a difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, and in an industry like this, where so many different types of vendors all work together on one event,
Right.
what other industry has that? Where so many people, when you go to a lawyer, you go to that lawyer. When
Yeah.
you go to most industries, it's just you go to that person, they do the thing you need. But in our industry, you go to somebody who then brings together a wide range of people to do a job for sure.
Yeah, it's a dance. And from setup to tear down, we all choreograph, the movements and make sure we support each other and don't get in each other's way and
Yeah,
don't break anything.
I love it. I love it. Mike, how about you?
This is a big one, but you can answer in 2 minutes or less. What's next?
I have a lot of work to do to bring back the people that I had to lay off, right? So my promise to them was I was going to keep the brand and the company alive, and if possible, I am going to bring them back on board, and I'm slowly starting to do that. And if I can't bring them on board because they've had to move on, or it's just I can't at the time, I've written so many letters of recommendation this last year, and I've passed so many job opportunities. What's next is making the people who worked for me whole.
Amazing.
Well said. Well said. This was awesome. This was a really, really great discussion, and we got into some good stuff. Is there anything that we didn't ask you about that, as we were talking, kind of popped into your head that maybe you want to leave us with before we shut her down?
I can't honestly think of anything. You guys asked good questions, and it was a lot of fun. And no, I think I'm good.
That's great. And I'm glad we had the chance to get to know each other a little bit better. As I said, I've gotten calls from your team over the years here and there for events for, entertainment and live music. Of course, I hope that we have the chance to be doing a lot of events together, all of us, and, getting back into, the grind together.
Yeah.
And but it's really inspirational to see you out there speaking on our behalf, acting on our behalf, or at least trying to foster multiple open lines of communications. And I hope more people do that. And I also hope a lot of people take heed to some of the things that you said here in this interview. So thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you.
We would love to have you back again when this is all done, to have a follow-up conversation on how we're doing once we're, going crazy and doing events again.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun because it's a roller coaster, right? We are going to be heading down some really exciting times. So
Yeah.
Darn right. All right. Well, Carol, thanks for joining us. Specialty Events. We'll let you know when this thing is going live. And thanks for spending time with us.
thanks.
Thanks for being here.
Woohoo!